What's going on, guys? Chris here with Clutter Reduction Junk Removal, and today we're going to drop off some clothing at one of those little donation dispensary things because Goodwill is not working out very well with most things, and I would rather not throw away 4 bags of perfectly good clothing. And then afterwards we're going to go head to the dump to drop off yesterday's fill, and then we'll be going to clean out a garage for the organizer. Now, this isn't like a garage clean out for all junk removal. We're moving it to a storage, but there may be some items that they want to get rid of that they don't really plan on keeping long term. So those are the things that we'll be hauling back with us. So that is what is on the agenda for today. So that job ended up postponing to Sunday because the carpet installers ended up being 3.5 hours late. So instead of just having me wait around for her to be ready for her client, we're just pushing off to Sunday morning. So what I was going to do was make a voiceover while we cleaned out the garage, something I wanted to talk about today. And I could still do it on Sunday, but I really want to talk about this today. And I actually have something else that I could talk about on Sunday, so we're just going to do this now. So hopefully that 30-second clip of me throwing really big, heavy bags of clothes into those little donation dispensary things was worthwhile of a watch. But what I wanted to talk about originally was some sales tips that I've learned over time. I've learned through the business, I've learned in moving, and I've learned back in college when I used to do business, law, and administration. I found a lot of useful things, and then I've applied them in the past, and they've proven to work for me. So I'm sure that they would probably work for you as well. But we'll save that for Sunday. Right now, I kind of want to talk about something else I've been personally working on over like the last year or so, and that is better communication with clients. So I went ahead and wrote down like 7 or 8 tips that I've gotten from articles over the past. Some of them I've gotten through spokespeople that I kind of watch regularly on YouTube. Some of them I've learned from, like I mentioned, in college when I took that business class. And then others are just kind of trial and error. They just learn over time. So I want to go out what I think are good tips. There's 8 of them, but I'm probably only going to say 6 or 7 of them because some of them are like super basic. But I'm going to go through these and hopefully you guys can utilize them for yourself. Of course, everything should be adjusted to your liking and your business operation. But hopefully you get something out of this. So, better communication with clients. Number 1, most important thing for pretty much life, and that is to listen actively. So make sure that you're listening more than you're talking, even when you're the salesperson. So people are calling you, you already know they want junk removal, but now is your goal to listen to the details, find out their situation and how you can better adjust to them that helps you stand out versus other competitors. So for example, I had a lady call me last week and she needed some general furniture removed from her living room, and then she just went on talking for like 4 or 5 minutes. And then she slipped in this thing about how her brother-in-law had a storage unit full of crap that he basically just abandoned, and they picked it up so that it wouldn't ruin his finances. But they've just been paying it off and they don't know what the hell to do with it. And then she went back to her original story and talked for another 4 or 5 minutes. And as I'm listening to the phone call, I wrote down storage question mark. And when she was done talking, I explained to her how junk removal works, and I told her we could set up an estimate, blah, blah, blah. She's super happy with everything. And then I went ahead and slipped in the storage unit. And I said, you had mentioned a while back about your brother-in-law's storage unit. Is that something that you want to set up on the same day? We can stop by, or maybe set up another time when we can go check it out. You can open the door and see, you know what, just go ahead and check it all, and I'll check it out on the spot. I'll give you a price right away. If you're happy with it, we'll grab it. And if you want to sit there and kind of sort through stuff and determine if it's donation or if it's junk or if you want to keep it, we can set up a situation where it's more labor-based, and I'll be a little bit more hands-on-hand with you guys. And we ended up booking an estimate for both. But that's a subtle little detail. I think she was just venting, but because I was listening and trying to catch the details and letting her talk instead of interrupting her, I was able to catch that detail and then apply it to essentially in another job, or a really big upsell, hopefully. We'll find out when we get there. But just making sure that you're understanding what your customer not only wants, but what they need, so that you can give them your full attention and then answer any questions about how you can solve their problems. The next thing, and this is something I've been trying to practice ever since I started business especially, and I don't know if you could tell through the YouTube videos, but it's actually helped a lot, and that is to communicate clearly. I know I'm a little bit of a talker sometimes, but trying to use simple language and try to avoid the real technical terms that the client probably won't know about, right? So we're talking to a client and you're like, junk removal depends on how much volume it takes up in the truck. And, it could be 90 cubic feet, blah, blah, blah. And most people don't know what cubic feet are, in terms of volume of visualizations. So if you say, I can fit 8 of your refrigerators in my trailer, and if you take 2 trailers or 2 refrigerators worth of space, that's a quarter of a truck. People can look at that and say, oh, okay, my refrigerator is pretty big, and you're saying 2 of them next to each other, it's about a quarter truck? Okay, I got that. So it's avoiding the technical stuff that most people aren't going to understand and providing more relatable terms. The next thing is to be responsive. So this is something that I have done, I think, especially as a small business, and I've had people specifically comment on this. So clients want to know when their needs are being heard and addressed, and they want to make sure that things are being up to date. So especially with service industries nowadays, there's a really bad lack of communication, especially in South Florida, where people will book you out 3 months in advance, and they just would never show up. And it's the whole time you're thinking okay, cool, they're going to be here on May 21st. And May 20th comes around, you've never heard from these people. And you're I'm sure it's fine. They're a big company, but they probably haven't put down a schedule. And then the morning of comes by and they never show up. And you call and they're oh yeah, sorry, we meant to say that we canceled, or we had to book, reschedule you. When I set people up, I always confirm the day before. And I call in the morning before I leave for the job and let them know I'm on my way, which also helps prevent me from last minute cancellations. I don't waste my time going out there. But let's say I book someone a month in advance. I just did a job for an apartment building. He was moving to California. I booked him back in November, and we just did a job early March. And I had reached out to him in the beginning of January, kind of halfway mark, and I was hey, I just want to do a follow-up, make sure that we're still good for March. And then I messaged him again in the beginning of March, so about 2 weeks prior. And then I reached out again a couple of days prior to make sure nothing changed on his end, because he's moving the same day. So I'm coordinating with other people that don't know me. And then, of course, I called the morning of. So by doing that, he let me know afterwards, too. He was I really appreciate you keeping in touch with me about everything, because the moving company actually rescheduled him twice. So he was just really happy about making sure he knew okay, this junk removal guy that I got his number from the building, I didn't do any research on him. I don't know who he is. I never met him. I know for a fact he's going to be here. He's been keeping up with me for the last 4 or 5 months. So being responsive, if someone messages you or inquires with you, try to call them back as soon as possible, reply to their email, whatever it is, try to be as quick as possible, which is also good for you, because that means you're providing less time for the client to go seek out other services. So if I message you and my goal is to reach out to 3 people and you call me back in literally 2 minutes before I can even dial the next number, you might be able to sell me on the phone and then we're done. I'm going to be using you. So be responsive. The next one is pretty much the same thing, which is to provide regular updates. So I think that only really applies if you're doing like a really big job. So maybe you have a job that's spanning over a couple of days, or maybe you're doing multiple loads in that day. You're going to have a lot of moving parts just to stay updated with the client. Number 6 is to be respectful and professional. So make sure that you are always remembering that you are representing your company, whether it's you or your employees. Make sure everyone is trained properly to not only do the job, but to be good at customer service. You want to make sure that they can speak professionally. They're not going to be cursing to the customer or bad-mouthing the company. You want to make sure that they're going to dress professionally. They're going to present themselves professionally. They're going to make sure that they're satisfying the customer's needs when it comes to your service. And just overall, even with people that have nothing to do with you, if you're at an apartment building and, let's say one of the maintenance guys comes out and he uses the elevator before you and he's like, sorry, I gotta go do something really quick. And you're like, oh yeah, screw you. Maybe he had an emergency he had to attend to, but then maybe the manager comes by, she's like, you guys are on the same floor. Like, what do you think about that junk removal company? Is that someone that we could use for our vendor? And he's like, oh, he told me to fuck off because I used the elevator before him because I had to rush down to so-and-so. So, like, if you were being more polite and just courteous and act more professional because you're a guest at their apartment building, maybe they wouldn't have anything bad to say about you. I've had it happen with moving. So, the next thing is to be proactive. So don't wait for your client to ask something. Anticipate their needs and offer solutions proactively. So kind of going back to that active listening when it comes to like the storage unit example. Instead of the customer, she mentioned the storage unit, so maybe I could assume, all right, afterwards she's probably going to bring up the storage again and ask me about it. It seemed like it was an important enough detail that she interrupted herself to talk about it. If I just assume she's going to ask and she never does, maybe I forget about it, maybe she forgets about it, whatever it is gone. But if I can anticipate that they're going to need that storage unit cleaned out eventually, and I can at least put that offer out there, and I can provide a solution, say, I can either come out and give you a quote on the spot and take it all, or give you more of a hands-on-hand situation and try to work through it. You're providing a service or you're providing a solution that they haven't asked for yet, but they need. So being proactive, I think it's very important, especially with junk removal. It's kind of doing upsells. So when you load up a job, let's say you're taking 2 or 3 pieces, you tell the customer, hey, do you have anything else maybe in your garage, in your shed, in the backyard, in the patio, whatever you want me to take out now? Because if I have to come back, it's going to be a minimum pickup. If I get something now, it's only going to push you up X amount of dollars. So you're not really creating a problem. You're solving a potential future one if they need it. And then the last thing I think is very important, and I've actually have done this when trying to get reviews. I've tried a few different ways of talking to people about reviews because they're super hit or miss. And that is to ask for feedback. So, checking in with their customers, ask them oh, what did you think about my service today? How did you feel talking to me and during the estimate and stuff? Because what you're doing is you're showing your client that you value their input and that you're committed to improving the way you present your business. Not to mention, you can also ask in person and say, hey, what did you think about everything? Especially the people to sit there and talk to you and they're kind of friendly with you. You can ask them how they thought about you. And, if they all speak really well of you, say, great, thank you so much for the feedback. By the way, if I send you a review link, would you be able to leave a review? So it's a nice little way in, but it's also not just leaving for a review, which everyone knows is going to help your business. But if you can physically ask them for feedback in person, whether they leave a review or not, maybe it's not good feedback. You're not going to want a review. But maybe it was a stressful situation. Maybe there's a miscommunication with pricing and they weren't the happiest, but the service was completed as necessary. And, maybe when you ask about feedback, they say, everything was great. I just wish you were a little bit more clear about the pricing with the volume. That kind of confused me a little bit. That's feedback. Maybe that's something that you very lightly touched over, and it's an important part of junk removal. or maybe it's something that you skipped altogether and just assume that they knew. Never assume anything, right? Common sense ain't so common. So those are the 6 to 7 out of 8 tips that I found to be most helpful and the ways I've applied them. So I hope those kind of give you guys a little bit of an idea. And then, like I said, on Sunday, I'm going to talk about some of the sales tips that I've learned over time. And I've used quite a few of them already, and I find them to be very helpful when they do. And even if nothing turns about it, I think it still just helps build a habit of keeping, like really honing in on the skills you're learning, whether they work or not. So that's it for me. I'm going to continue doing my little marketing things. I've started doing a flyer. I talked about this, it's like a moving flyer for realtors for moving season that I'm going to drive by to offices and give to. And it's basically going to have like different tips and like explaining junk removal and stuff like that. After I make it and send some out, I'll show you guys what I ended up doing. But I think it's going to be a really good, like educational, helpful. That's also going to be a little bit of a marketing play too. So that's it for me. Hopefully this rant wasn't super long. Like I said, I was going to do this as a voiceover, so it wasn't super boring. But it is what it is. And hope everyone is having a good week. And hope everyone has a busy weekend ahead. But thanks for watching. Bye.